Well, should we get started?
I think so.
Okay. Well, I think we're going to start with introductions. I'll go first. Welcome everybody, and we'll let other people join as they can. I'm Spec, and I am art management specialist for the art department, which doesn't mean anything to most of you probably, but I administer our grant programs. I place all the art in Black Rock City. I manage the Arterian volunteer team, and I am an artist liaison, so I work with some of the art projects that will be coming. Peter?
And my name is Peter Platzkummer. I am also, or working in the art department full time. I am the complex art project manager at Burning Man. Complex art means I'm responsible for managing all the mostly big art projects. Complex can also be something else, like they have special problems with permits, with their engineering, with the technology that they're using, or they might be a bit more complex to deal with in general. Whatever it is, that's what we're here for. Both of us are artist liaison, and the main job for us as artist liaison is that we're essentially going with the artist from the moment they join or they register at Burning Man and say they want to do an art piece until they're off playa, and we're trying to help them as much as we can. One of the things that we're helping with is camps. Well, actually, we don't have to do a lot there, but we're interacting with placement, and that was one of the reasons why placement asked us if we could do a breakout session here. And I'll show you quickly what we're going to do. Awesome. We're going to do a little bit of context setting first. Essentially explaining to you what the art department does and what not, and what we consider art on On-Playa and whatnot. We're giving you a little bit of a sneak peek on the Honoraria projects that we just selected. Spec is the perfect person for that, since she is the one handling all the grants at Burning Man. And then we're going to look into how theme camps can support artists. Um, Thinking about it more and more, I'm not really happy with the support artists. It's more kind of an interaction, but the way we see it is you are the absolute experts when it comes to camping or to building camps and running camps. Our artists are the experts in, some of them are experts in making art. Um, And there's some really awesome ways how camps have supported them over the last years, and we want to show you a few. And then we have a Q&A, and maybe at the end we stop a little bit early and, well, I don't know, it might be worth staying and you see stuff that you haven't seen yet. Um, I'll hand over. Spec.
Thank you, Peter. So I'm going to start us out with some context in case you don't know a lot about the art department. We are made up of 8 year-round staff. We have over a dozen seasonal staff. Some are paid, some are volunteer. And then once we're out on Playa, there are over 200 volunteers. I listed the 6 teams that are volunteer teams. So it's a lot of us that work on supporting the art that's in Black Rock City. Our physical location out there is the Artery. That's the name of our building. And we're located at 630 and Esplanade, which it really functions as the check-in center for artists during Build Week. And then it becomes kind of a hub of information about the art during event week. So you can come find out more about that. The next slide. So I thought it would be helpful to talk a little bit about what is in our scope because there's art all over at Burning Man, from the costumes you put on to the mutant vehicles and everything else. So this is a map of the city without all the stuff. And the dark yellow is what we consider inner playa. So basically all the way to the temple if the esplanade continued all the way around. Deep playa is outside of that, the lighter yellow, and we place art all the way to the trash fence. Minus the dance music zone, the DMZ is that red rectangular shape, and behind that, all the way to the trash fence, we avoid. And then in the city, you see those little yellow circles. Those are the plazas and portals. There are 9 plazas, and then also the 6 o'clock keyhole. And then historically, we've placed art around center camp. And we'll see how that changes with the new central plaza design. We also place art at the airport. And then there's mobile art, and that's art that moves around on the open playa, but it still has a home there. It's not one that goes back to a camp. And then it doesn't carry passengers like a mutant vehicle. So what's not considered in our scope, you see the red on this map. Of course, the city itself, besides the plazas and portals, there's a ton of art in the camps and also art in center camp, and none of that is in our purview. And then the red lines and circles on the graphic represent other areas. Of course, the promenades, the streets to the man from the city and from the man to the temple, are roadways. We don't place art there. The man and man base, including all of the art that might activate that, is actually coordinated by a separate department. And we avoid a large area around both the man and the temple to accommodate those burn perimeters. But what I thought would be interesting to clarify in this session is that, the camps that are placed on the Esplanade, 2 o'clock and 10 o'clock, they actually have 100 feet across the street front where they can put art or anything they want related to their camp. So think of Thunderdome, that's actually in that 100-foot zone. And so when an artist comes through our registration process, and if they're camped on one of those streets, they may not realize that we can't actually place them right across from their camp. So in those cases, it's better if they don't register, and they just work with their theme camp on activating that 100 feet. You can go to the next slide. Okay, I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the different ways that the art that we oversee gets to Playa. So of course, we've got our Temple and Honoraria grant programs. Those are closed for 2024. Usually we're working on that in the fall and through the winter. And most of the art actually falls into the category that we call registered art. So as long as it meets some basic guidelines, you can bring it. And we don't jury and say, yes, this can come, no, this can't come, beyond what we select for the honoraria and the temple. And there's actually some great guidelines on our website, and we will try to get that link into the chat if you want to learn more about what is okay to do and propose. And the registration form in order to register art is actually open now. So you can share with your campmates, and even you yourself are welcome to register with us. You have until May 22nd. That's at noon, that deadline. It's through your burner profile, the participation forms. We can also put that link in the chat as well. And even if you miss that deadline, and you realize 2 weeks before that you want to bring a little thing, we actually accommodate walk-in art registration, and you can do that at the artery. There's just a few more guidelines. It can't be taller than 10 feet because that usually triggers some review of the engineering. It can't be burned or have pyrotechnics because those decisions have already been made by then. And it cannot require the support from our art support services team or heavy equipment. But it still does allow you to bring art even if you decide at the last minute you want to do so. You can go to our next slide. So this is just a little graph showing the total number of art projects that's in our scope since we started tracking in 1999. So we really are anticipating around 400 art projects that we will be supporting in some way or another this year. So I want to move on to giving you all a little preview of the honoraria. The announcement just came out, as Peter said, on Tuesday. There's a whole journal post that goes into a lot more detail. If we can put that link in the chat, you can read more about it there. The most exciting thing is that we received a budget increase. We got an additional $100,000 this year. It's the first budget increase we've received since 2018. And we really made it a priority to, instead of increasing the number of projects, which we usually select around 75 honoraria plus the temple, we made it a priority, instead of increasing that number with the extra money, that we would actually increase award amounts. So, and fund things at a higher percentage. We never fund things, or rarely fund things 100% of their proposed budget, It's usually around 40 to 60% of at least what they're anticipating their budget to be. This year, we were able to increase the award amounts for 26% of the honoraria that went beyond what they requested. So that was exciting. And you can go to the next slide. This just shows we have 12 international projects this year from all over the world. Next slide shows the US map and where it's spread this year. There's always a high percentage of California and Nevada projects, of course, due to the proximity. There's also just a lot of experienced crew and build spaces and donors, so that's pretty typical. And then I'm going to go into sharing some of the themes that came out of this year. And of course, there's the overall art theme of Curiouser and Curiouser. And we saw a lot of, playing with scale on the playa is really common, but this year it's also on theme. So I think probably the fan favorite currently is our Coney McCone face, the life and death of a traffic cone. This is anticipated to be our tallest project so far. It's going to be 60 feet tall, and they're also hoping to burn it, which would make it our largest burn besides the man in the temple. And the next slide shows a little more of some literal interpretations of the theme. And I just wanted to point out the mushroom in the middle is by the Chinese artist who brought that big pink bunny last year, which was a registered project. It was not an honorarium. And if you remember, after the rainstorm, the pink bunny had trash bags on its feet. So this year she is back with this mushroom. And the next slide shows a lot of projects are spinning, or you can spin it, or they have a topsy-turvy aesthetic, which also seemed to feel like a good fit for the theme this year. And so our next slide goes into some of the other themes as we were going through the selection process. We really do use other thematic elements to kind of anchor our decision making. And something that we noticed after several years of a lot of challenge post-pandemic, that we were feeling a whimsical vibe this year. There was this collective energy that came through that felt like a lot of more lightheartedness, fun, color. And so we really leaned into that with our selections. And the next slide shows, speaking of fun and colorful, we actually have 3 honoraria projects that feature unicorns. We just kind of decided to lean into it this year instead of just picking one. So there's going to be a lot of whimsy out there. Another theme is the playa, of course, was a body of water thousands of years ago, and the maritime theme does remain strong. But this year it's really coming through. We've got boats, we've got coral, there's a sea serpent, there's even a pile of treasure. So that's really going to be fun. Next slide. Of course, we've got to make sure we keep the burning in Burning Man. OF1 means open fire level 1, and that is essentially the projects that will burn. And when you receive an honorarium, that doesn't guarantee that it will burn. That's actually a separate selection process, and it also includes registered art. So that those decisions will come later. But 8 of our honoraria hope to burn. And then FE stands for flame effects. And there's 8 projects that are honoraria so far that will have flame effects. You can advance the slide now. And since 2022, we've really made a concerted effort to diversify our honoraria recipients. This takes time to see results, and we've already started to notice more diversity in the grant proposals, and we do take that into account along with our other criteria. And then lastly, my last slide on honoraria, sustainability is another area that we have put in a lot of effort, and it is paying off. 41% of this year's honoraria are making a significant effort to be sustainable. And it's really impressive because last year it was 35%. And significant means that they're doing more than just solar. So we're just really excited to see that and see the community responding to that. So that's a little sneak peek. Hopefully we can get those links in the chat if they aren't already, and I see them there. You can read more about the announcement, and I will hand it back off to Peter for the main part of our session.
Thank you, Spec. I am really looking forward to these art pieces. They're so awesome. Like, I should certainly not have favorites, but I cannot wait to see that cone happening. Like, it just excites me. Um, how can camp support artists on Playa? Um, I was saying before, I was thinking a bit if this is the right title or not, because at the end of the day, it's more about an interaction than about the support. And there's a lot of art camps or of camps in general that do not have the money or the resources to support anyone. I remember my first camp that I was the camp lead, the Bucket List Brigade. We had a budget of $200 for a shade structure, and the $200 only happened because we had one person who paid for it, and that shade structure was incredibly crappy. And we still had an awesome time. And what we can do here is we can show you ways how camps can support artists if they want. Because I also know that not everyone is here for art. And we are also aware that this is not the only art. I saw Fixer writing in the chat that he considers his camp to be art too, or an art project too, with a frontage that takes away 1.5 semi trucks, and that's totally true. But that is absolutely the case. Um, what we consider art for the art department is exactly what Spec said before. It's just the stuff on On-Playa, and that's why we are more and more calling it On-Playa art, to really try and make this distinction that we're not trying to take away the definition of art, because a lot of you do amazing and gorgeous art in the camps, and that's important to us. That you don't get monetary support is a thing. I'm sorry for that. We decided at some point that we're focusing on the on-play art. That's what we're doing at the moment. In all fairness, the main reason is that it's already overwhelming for us with almost 600 applications that are coming in. Shall we look at the first topic? I saw Jump was already jumping. Now you can jump.
Yep.
Where to stay in Black Rock City? Obviously, the part where camps are the bigger experts than everyone else is with camping. And with our artists, we pretty much see everything. We have way more walking camping than I thought would be possible. Like, personally, I'm not the biggest fan. Like, I cannot imagine for myself going into walking camping, but we certainly have a whole bunch of them, especially artists that just start and I think are a bit overwhelmed by the idea to find a camp that can support them, and then decide to go down the route where they essentially get a camp at Walmart and go with PB&J and PBR for a week, and that's about semi-successful, I would say. The most classic ways for our artists is an art support camp. It's essentially like a theme camp, with the difference that you're not expected to do interactive art at your camp, since you are doing, or an interactive part at your camp, since you are doing art on Playa. That's essentially the substitution for it. It's the same for mutant vehicle camps, where the interactivity is considered the mutant vehicle itself. Art support camps, as well as mutant vehicle camps, have a bit of a disadvantage that they're very tight. Like, you're really only supposed to have the people that you need to build art, plus one or two people that are specifically for camp, and that's about it. So while uh, while they're kind of nice and chill, they're also on the smaller side of things. The new thing that's really awesome for us, at least, is hubs. Um, you all know what hubs are. At least I think most of you do. Hubs are ways of sharing resources by getting placed next to each other, where you can share something like a generator with an art support camp or with another theme camp. Hubs is really something where we see a lot of artists kind of try to find theme camps where they can support them or where they can work together. There's also a good chance that we have artists that actually have really big resources that they can easily share with a theme camp. Like, we have some artists that need to charge quite a lot of battery banks during the day. We have artists that are really, really good with solar that want to do more there. It's something that certainly goes in both directions. For hubs, there's a registration deadline. Registration deadline is the last Thursday in March, which is kind of important, especially for the people here that are doing art support camps, because that deadline is earlier than the one for support camps. For art support camps as well as for mutant vehicle camps, the registration deadline is usually in end of April. And then we have theme camps. We certainly have a whole bunch of artists that are just part of theme camps and working directly with a theme camp or staying at a theme camp while while they work on their art piece during the week. And then let's look at one more specific example. Thank you. One of the camps that does, or one of the theme camps that does a really awesome job in supporting artists is Vertical Camp. Vertical Camp has roughly 170 campers all in all, and 40 of these campers are coming from art. Usually what Vertical Camp does is that they're focusing on supporting BIPOC artists. And over the last year, they had essentially every big BIPOC art project. I think they had one for you too, Spec. Were they working with Aaron or?
Oh, in 2022, yeah.
Yeah. So they had Farmer the Rigger last year, and the year before it was Black Ager, which were certainly some of the biggest projects we had on Playa. One of the really nice ways how they make this success for both sides is that they integrate the work of the artist and host them in a camp gallery, which is part of their interactivity. So the artists essentially help with the interactive part of the theme camp.
Yeah, and I don't know if you were going to say this, Peter, but I was going to add on that once our art listings page goes up, and it's not up yet, we just announced our honoraria, we've got registered art coming in, but we have an art listings page that will be for 2024. And if you have a camp and you're like, I would love to host an artist, you might look through and see, oh, this one's from Seattle, I'm from Seattle, look for location or just for things you love and reach out. Usually there's contact information and just find out, do they need help? Because a lot of artists do. I mean, there's certainly artists that have their camp situation dialed in, but there are others that would probably love to hear from you and explore that opportunity.
Absolutely. I think the biggest difference between art crews and theme camp crews is that the art crews are usually new. Like I would say about half of our artists have not built a large project on a Burning Man before and don't really have the resources because it's not that over the years they built up and the kitchen's getting better every year or the shade structure is getting better every year. So that makes quite a big difference. I see some questions. I'm trying to answer a lot of the questions right away because it's kind of easy here. Is Vertical Camp considered a theme camp? As far as I know, yes, it's not considered an art support camp. I can tell you that much. Vertical Camp is in so far a bit special that they have so many artists in it that there's going to be a bit of a discussion with how tickets are shared, and that's certainly a bit of a it makes things a slightly bit more problematic, but I think it's worth for everyone to have these special discussions. Nadia is asking, how do I find the list of artists to reach out to? So right now, the only list that we have is the list in the Honoraria announcement. What we do have later in probably early to mid-April is an art installation page where we show you an overview of all the art installations with a short description and with a photo. That usually also has a contact in it and you see where they're coming from. Jörg is asking if I could say a few words about support options in Build Week. And yes, we are talking about Build Week a bit more about different things. Like we wanted to start with camping because camping seems like a very obvious option for camps. And it's certainly the part where our artists are the shittiest. I'll say it just like that. Like you are extremely focused on trying to build an art piece. And in many ways, you're just completely forgetting that you also have to live and survive during that time, and that living and surviving out on Playa is not always the easiest thing.
Yep. And I can answer this question about the murals at Center Camp. That has historically been managed by the Center Camp team, including any art within, like under the canopy as well. So that is not something that we oversee.
However, there's going to be some more news there. We are just so Center Campus Central Plaza will have an artist liaison too, who's working a little bit closer with us together than the years before, because we're trying to
Yeah.
get better with these processes.
Mhm.
Okay. Shall we go on? Let's look at the
Yeah.
next topic. Sharing stuff, equipment. Like one of the really, really awesome things that a lot of camps have is just big equipment. I know, like having led some large theme camps too, I know one of the reasons is that Burning Man or DBW isn't always fond of supporting a camp, or especially not of supporting a camp as the very first one. And a lot of camps have kind of started to go the route that they have their own equipment because of that. That's, by the way, also true for large art camps. The reason for that, in very general terms, is the bigger a project, the more resources they're gonna have bound to their art piece. And the idea is that the heavy equipment that we have is being shared as much as we can with different projects. It's also harder for us if it's a project in the Playa to give them the support, because we're essentially losing half an hour in time that we are striving out and about. It's obviously happening, but it's just kind of taking away a lot of the time. Um, Heavy equipment is always in demand, but a lot of our projects, especially the one in that are in the inner playa, only need heavy equipment for kind of a day or for a single pick, like this one here. That's Odyssey by Clayton Blake from last year. And quite often, it's really possible that a theme camp that's close by is offering them to help out and just do it on the side and do it quicker. And in this case, it was, I think, TPW, but we had the project right next door. Uh, Queen Cobra, where a theme camp helped and put up the crown, because the DPW personnel had to go back with the VR to get something fixed, and the VR from Frozen Oasis in that case was just driving by and decided to kind of help out for 10 minutes. That's super awesome, and we're incredibly appreciative about this. I think in very general terms, uh, this is about sharing resources between all of us. I think everyone is doing that, and the more you do it, the easier it gets for everyone.
I like
Um,
that how you point out, Peter, that like it doesn't have to be a VR, sometimes an impact driver, or some smaller tool or equipment. You never know. And when you're out kind of roaming around, like Pegorama mentioned in the chat, you can just stop in and say, "Hey, how's it going?" And you might find out that their impact driver battery died and they're waiting, or something like that. So
Or you have the crazy engineer who decided to buy this super special tool because that makes everything better. We all have these friends who bring this one special tool out on Playa, and uh, it's certainly helpful to tell others that you have this tool if that engineer is willing to share it. I know sometimes they are not. So you look at one more thing. Next slide, please. Trucking. Trucking is actually a big thing. Trucking is incredibly costly at this point. Like for the temple, we're talking about 10% of the overall costs that are essentially going into trucking at this point. I know trucking is also incredibly costly for theme camps, but what happens quite often is that we have artists who just have this one piece that is incredibly awkwardly shaped, and they can just not fit it on their 20-foot trailer, on their 10-foot trailer, or whatever. If you do have a little bit of space on the side and can just say, hey, we're not able to offer a lot, but we have 1 foot space that's 20 foot long. And if you have a long pole that you need to get transported, then that's an option. Please try and offer that if you can. We always have artists that are struggling with this kind of stuff, especially if you come from areas where you might have an artist just close by. Check in with them and ask if that's an option. It might also be an option in the other direction, because we do have artists that have to book a whole 40-foot trailer and only use 30-foot of that. And then we have, I think, one more. We're looking at sharing information. I thought we have one more. We don't. Uh, Sharing information is incredibly important for our artists, because we have roughly 450 art pieces that are going to Playa. I would say about half of them are trying to collect funds via some kind of fundraising. Nowadays, with social media essentially expecting money for advertisement, it's incredibly hard to get in front of people and to be able to share the information from your art piece. One of the things that I can highly suggest, and that really helps the artist, but is also really fun for your theme camp, is finding an art piece that fits your theme really well and just go for it. Like, on the left, you see bananas for scale. I mean, that's just a suggestion, but maybe that fits incredibly well to organic fruit and veggie camp. We also have a shit ton of unicorns, as every year. I think, Spec, you said we have 3 projects already.
3 of the Honoraria are unicorns. And fun fact, my old theme camp was unicorn related. So if we were still going, we would have totally jumped on those kinds of partnerships.
We also have a lot of regional partnerships. East Bay Burners always does an awesome job trying to connect burners and theme camps in the East Bay with artists. That's even more important to us in areas where we don't have a lot of support from our side. I mean, Bay Area, Reno is relatively easy because a lot of us are there anyway. Everything outside of that makes it much harder for the theme camp as well as for the artist. Sharing information, sharing promotion, maybe having a party together are really good ways of doing things there. What other themes do we have that feels like they fit really well to theme camps? I know the cones and brass tacks are probably going to be incredibly excited, but I feel like DPW is going to take that cone, especially gate. What do you think?
Yeah, that's definitely the fan favorite right now. I think everyone wants to to get involved with it. But so, also look for the littler things too.
That's true. And I mean, the littler ones always have issues finding the fundraising, and it's usually not a lot that they need or that they should have.
Yeah, that cone is going to have to raise a lot of money. And sometimes, a little one, you could just do something that doesn't really cost your group very much at all. And it could be the difference of, oh, they just need $1,500, not $50,000. So
I also want to be clear, like, we're not saying like you find ways of giving artists money. I mean, what we're saying is find ways of sharing information and doing the promotion together, because it can help both of you. Like, when we did, I was the project lead for La Victrola. We offered quite a few camps that we would help out with decorations for their fundraisers with our stuff. And what we asked for it was essentially that we have a link to our fundraiser on their webpage, or that we have a link to our fundraiser at the event. There's a lot of these kind of options. We just saw the Afterlife project was rented out to the Midway to an event in San Francisco. So these ways where parts of the art piece are actually used as decorations for theme camps are happening quite often.
yeah, and a lot of artists are doing prototypes and testing things, so they may have a smaller version or a piece of something, and um, even some of that could end up decorating your camp if there is some alignment, like Peter was showing with concept of the banana and the fruit and veggie stand. So, there's a lot of ways you can get creative with partnering with these artists.
And then The other thing that artists can do before and on Playa that all of them are very excited, or a lot of them are very excited, is doing artist talks, and that would be the next page. A lot of camps have actually space for talks, and quite a lot of them are organizing some form of artist talks. And I can highly suggest to check in with artists early and ask them. We're doing the same. Spec is usually organizing an artist talk on Playa. When are they usually happening?
Yeah, we do art speaks on Playa. Usually it's 3 days. I don't know what it's going to look like this year with the reimagining of the Central Plaza, but the last 2 years it's been in Center Camp on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday in the afternoon, and we'll bring some of our big projects, small projects, a diverse group of artists that'll do like a panel style moderated discussion. But there's way more artists than we can really invite to that program, and it's really great when camps get involved too. Like Peter said, if you're looking for ways to activate your space, and you've got a time spot open and maybe you already have the infrastructure in place, this is a great way to connect with artists and they can be helping you out too with your interactivity.
Or if you're lacking interactivity?
Mhm.
Yes. I mean, then we're back again. Like if Fruit and Veggie makes an artist talk with artists that make large bananas, then this is pretty much on point. And all of you are going to be excited about, well, the artist is going to be excited as much as the others.
Yeah,
Nadia's
these
asking.
artists like to talk about their art, they really look for these opportunities and a lot of them are still fundraising and will be fundraising well past the playa. So to them, they like the visibility and they also just like to connect with people and answer questions and get feedback about how people have been interacting with their art.
Nadia is asking for artist talks. Should we also just do the same, reach out to them manually when the art installation page is up? Yes, in general, that's by far the easiest and best way of doing it.
Yeah.
Um, Usually almost all artists are having a contact email on the art installation page.
Yeah.
Uh, and they usually have, if they are looking for money, they have a fundraiser on it, and you see at least a photo on the description, and often you get a link to Instagram too, which should really give you a good idea what's going on and what these artists are doing and if they are fit or not. And then I haven't heard about an artist who's complaining when a theme camp is kind of checking in with them to see if they're interested about an artist talk.
You can also use the search function on the art installation page. I was doing it just the other day just to see, okay, is there anybody in Seattle or in, where you're located if you're really looking for somebody who's in the same community or similar community as you.
Mhm. Yes. And shall I go on?
Yeah.
Um, Sharing strength is certainly the biggest thing. Like you just have a lot of people. And what we see quite often is that we have theme camp members who will be part of art installations first and then move to theme camp builds. Um, that is a pretty standard thing. It is a bit complicated for us, to be very honest, because we're not always very sure how we can deal with the I want to say work access passes, but I just learned that there's a new name for it, and I can't remember the new name.
I
Spec,
don't know.
you remember that one?
No.
Oh, setup access pass is most probably how it's been called, apparently.
Oh,
Yeah. Um, So whatever it is, the early arrival passes that we used to have in camp, we're trying to only give our builders the early arrival pass or the setup access pass for the days that they need on Playa. So if they are planning to build something and then go on and build with the theme camp, then this needs a bit of a discussion on our end. This is that we appreciate it, and it's a good way of sharing resources, especially if this is, I don't know, you have someone in your theme camp who's an excellent rigger. That person, or she is always doing all the shade structures in your camp, and she's really needed for this one art piece. Then we're certainly able to figure this out. But we really appreciate if you tell us that we can try and figure this out beforehand as much as we need. This, by the way, is Queen Cobra, the project I was talking about before, and the one piece that you cannot see is the crown that I was talking about. Awesome piece. Queen Cobra by Andrea Greenlist and Andy Tibbetts is sorry, Andrea Greenlist and Andy Tibbetts are, by the way, the ones who are having the art piece with the clock this year, the one that you've seen before.
The end
And
of time.
yeah, the end of time. That's how it's called. It always takes me until like roughly July to remember all the names from all the art pieces that I'm working with. Roughly that time. Next one. Burn perimeter. That's a huge one for us.
Yeah.
Spec was showing you that we so far selected 8 open fire projects. Open fire projects, open fire 1 are the projects that are getting burned, like the classic burns on Playa. At the end, we will probably end up having around 15. That's roughly what we had in the last few years. 15 is certainly less than we used to have years before, but since 2018, rules are a bit stricter when it comes to how many EST personnel, how many emergency service personnels, how many rangers and whatsoever need to be at a burn. And that's why we're trying not to have as many. Also because it's a sustainability question, and we're actually quite strict about reasons why you can burn and why not. Like you need to come, you cannot just say we're burning because we don't want to carry it home.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, every burn needs a burn perimeter, and these burn perimeters are pretty big. Um, even for a small, a really small burn where the burn perimeter is just 50 feet, we will need 20 additional volunteers. For a large burn perimeter, like we had for Chapel of Babel last year, we need more than 100 additional volunteers. Additional volunteers means next to the FAST team that's already there, next to the team from the art department that's already there, next to EST, next to Rangers, next to all the people that we bring anyway.
Well, and it's worth repeating, the smallest burn perimeter that we will have out there is 50 feet. So, that's minimum going to need those 20 volunteers. So it's a lot of people to make those burns happen.
Not having enough volunteers is the number one reason why burns don't happen. So in 2022, we had the Solar Shrine that was supposed to be the big burn on Friday night. We were supposed to burn at, I think, 9 o'clock, and at 8:30, when we have to go through with the representative from the Bureau of Land Management to show how many to show that we have a safe burn perimeter, we didn't have enough volunteers. We had enough volunteers about 30 minutes later, and all would have been well, but 30 minutes later, a dust storm started, and that dust storm didn't end for hours. And at the end of the day, that was the reason why we didn't have a burn on Friday night that day. Like this is a really, really huge thing for us. We have art pieces that have been really good working together with a theme camp. For example, Sir Shasana in 2022 was working with a theme camp, and all their volunteers from the burn perimeter were from one single theme camp they worked with. The same was last year with the Ukrainian piece. They were working with a Ukrainian theme camp. The Ukrainian piece was called Phoenix, and the Ukrainian theme camp was helping them out quite a lot with volunteers for the burn perimeter. And as Whisper is saying, burn perimeter is the best view of the burn. Yes and no. I was thinking about that when I posted this picture, because these burn perimeter people aren't necessarily sitting the way they're supposed to, because burn perimeter is usually looking or staring at the crowd and not at the burn. Uh,
Yeah. There's a question in the chat, and I was going to say, let's mention what people do even once you're on Playa. If you're like, oh, I want to help with some burn perimeters, what should they do, Peter?
So if you as a camp want to help, do it exactly the same way as we said before. Look if there's a burn piece that you really like. You will see usually if these pieces get burned or not in the description on the art installation. If you see one that you really like, talk to the artist. We're also telling the artist to post in the Theme Camp Organizer Facebook page and in other pages if they need help with these kind of stuff. So look there too. If you can make a larger cooperation and just say, hey, this is a really cool thing, and our camp is willing to kind of come with 20 volunteers for this one night, that would be really super helpful. That really makes a huge difference for us. The other best way is actually just going to coming on Playa to the volunteer spot or to the artery and saying that you would like to be part of a burn perimeter. And then you will be connected to the burn perimeter support group who is doing trainings on Playa and then giving you options for the different burns that are happening.
I've also seen people come to see a burn, and you're all waiting and sitting around, and I've seen them say, hey, do you need more people on the burn perimeter, and just jumping in that moment to help. And I've seen it really kind of take a project kind of over the top, in terms of, Peter was mentioning, the number one reason why they don't burn is if they don't have a sufficient burn perimeter. I watched a project go from, uh-oh, we don't have a sufficient burn perimeter, to, okay, now we're set, let's burn.
Mhm. It's really like that. Like I had at least 2 projects last year. I mean, last year was very special because some of the volunteers were just not there any longer, and you can really not blame any one of them. Like if you had a tent that was underwater, then I do not expect you to be there the next day. We had even with the temple burn, we had the case that we had to walk through all the burn perimeter with the beeline person twice until that person saw that we had enough people to start the temple burn, which is quite a big issue for us. Okay. And then I do think we have one more slide. Flash mobs. That's actually one of my most exciting topics, and it's also the most simple way of supporting. In a way, it's what Pegorama wrote before in the chat, that sometimes it's really just kind of going by and seeing what you can do and being very impromptu. And I want to give you one of these examples of how impromptu things can be. The piece that you see here is Consumption by Tom Bogner and the Desert Propaganda Collective from Reno from 2022. Piece was awesome. It was almost 40 feet tall and was this kind of dollar sign made of refrigerators and freezers and all kinds of heavy equipment. And for most of the week, it looked like the photo on the left. That's how the build site looked like. The reason was that Tom and his build crew realized very quickly that these fridges are fucking heavy. And they just got burnt out carrying them from the truck from one end of the place to the other. And then we all know how this works when you're on Playa. You think you start setting things up there, and then you're realizing you need to move it a little bit to the other side. It was, I don't want to say it was a disaster, but it could have certainly worked better and easier. And then uh everything changed within, like, I was driving by saying hi, asked them how they are, and they were all burnt out. And I drive by 2 hours later and they all look incredibly happy and are just 10 times farther than they've been until this point. And what happened was that a theme camp decided to go for a bike ride. It must have been almost Saturday or Sunday at this point. They went on a bike ride drove by this build site, stopped and said, you know what? We can gift you 15 minutes of our time. Here are 20 people. All of us can carry heavy stuff. Tell us what we have to do. And within 15 minutes, all the fridges, all the refrigerators got to be placed at the point that they had to. That's the things that I mean, that saved this art piece in all reality. And that's exactly what Pegorama said before about
Yeah, and I love how it's
it
15 minutes.
yeah,
Like 15 minutes. That's nothing.
it
And
really
it makes a
is.
huge impact.
It is absolutely nothing, and it absolutely made a big impact. We're also one of the things that I'm always doing when I'm on Playa when we're cleaning up the temple is that everyone that stops by to grab some stuff out of the ashes gets voluntold by me to help clean up, even if it's just for 5 minutes. Um, it really makes a difference for the people who are doing this the whole day. If you're in the temple crew and you started at 6 in the morning to clean up the burn site and you're doing nothing else than going through these ashes the whole day, it's incredibly frustrating when you see some people stopping by and then just digging through, but then grabbing two things and leaving. If these people help for 5 minutes and just move a few things around, it's a huge difference. And let's do the next slide. I think we're almost at the end. We have one more big thing, and that's obviously funds. Um, as I said before, we do not expect that that a theme camp is able to donate money to artists. We really don't. There are enough theme camps that need money too, and there's a lot of theme camps who do fundraisers. However, there are theme camps who do have extra money, and what we see is that we have some theme camps that even go so far as having their own art grants. Playa Alchemy here has a really neat art grant application that you can apply for, and you can get, I think, for smaller pieces, certainly significant amount of money from them to be on it. And usually, what they do is that they're working with the artist during the whole year and seeing how else the artist can be integrated in the camp. There's also I have some friends who are doing something similar to the Awesome Foundation, where you essentially invite 10 people for dinner and then tell them all to chip in what they would pay for dinner. And then you say, okay, let's find an art piece that we're supporting or that we're donating this money to. And that can actually already make a big difference. David is asking, is the 2200 volunteer requirement for burn perimeters required for pyro on mutant vehicles or only if we're burning entire pieces of art? The burn perimeters or safety requirements are very different for mutant vehicles. Sorry for jumping in. I thought the question would be straight about grants. The mutant vehicle has a different safety requirement. What is the same is that you have to discuss these safety requirements with FAST, with the fire art safety team, and they are the ones who make the requirement of the size of your burn perimeter or of your safety perimeter or of whatever other way of safety you have. So you have to talk to them. Usually that
And
happens after you register.
and I was just gonna just a little like term correction. Usually on the mutant vehicles, it's flame effects, FE or flame effects. Those are the poofers. Pyro usually means there's fireworks. And certainly each of those categories
Yeah.
has different safety requirements, but Peter was specifically talking about burn perimeters for the open fire level 1 burns.
So for our flame effects, we usually also don't have burn perimeters the same way that we have for open fire. The reason for that is that almost in all cases, well, I think in all cases, we're requiring that the flame effects go away from the audience, and we cannot really require an open fire to do exactly the same as it's told.
Right.
But I think that pretty much brings us to the Q&A part of this. So if you have any other questions that we can help with, we would be more than happy to do so. I saw one suggestion before, and I know Jörg sent that directly to me, but I want to share something. Is there a way of connecting artists directly and from the beginning with the home burner community? We started doing this. We're usually in contact with the regional team and giving the regional team the information which which art pieces are in their area. In some cases, that just happens very late. Like we cannot really know who's coming if it's a registered art piece. Like they might just come at the very end. When's the deadline for registered art spec?
For
Do you know?
registered art, it's May 22nd at noon, but then of course you can walk in and register small, simple pieces. So that's usually what takes us into, more like the 450, 400 to 450 projects is sometimes we get up to 50 walk-ins.
By the way, we had one large walk-in project last year that was too big for us, and we had a theme camp taking over.
Oh,
Um,
great example.
one of the most famous art pieces that was in Playa last year. Do you want to say a bit more about that?
Yeah, do you all remember near the 2 o'clock in Esplanade, those three huge inflatable planets? Um, They were, of course, I think 30 feet tall or something. And when they came to the artery, unfortunately, our guidelines, nothing over 10 feet. And so we had to turn them down, even though we loved it. And we're like, oh, yeah, register it next year. But instead of like, taking their ball and going home, or in this sense, taking their planets and going home, they found a theme camp that was willing to let them set up in that 100 feet. How I was mentioning earlier, the open playa, there's no line on the ground, but the first 100 feet does belong to the theme camp. And they were lucky enough to partner with somebody, and we got to see those planets.
We're a few minutes early, but I think we have someone who can help us fill this.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Me? Is it me?
it
It's
is you.
you.
Well, let me introduce you. I have the really big pleasure to introduce CJ Roughgarden to you. CJ is one of the lead artists of Naga and the Captainess. Naga and the Captainess is one of our biggest art pieces this year, and we thought if you are willing to suffer through our presentation, then we'll gift you a little bit of a sneak peek at the end, one that is a bit more in-depth than anything you've seen so far about Burning Man art for 2024. CJ, you want to take over?
Sure. Well, hi, I'm CJ Roughgarden. I'm one of the three co-leads of Naga and the Captainess. I am an architectural metal fabricator and artist. I do big art, public art, gates, handrails, staircases, stuff like that. Stephanie Shipman and Jackie Scott are building the shipwreck. They're not here today. Jackie's shooting a feature film. She's a set designer for theater and film, and Steph is a furniture maker, master woodworker, and teaches woodworking classes for women through her company. And I built it with my vagina. But so for today, I'm going to get to tell you about Naga and the Captainess. And this is special for me to get to tell people because out there on Playa, people are going to see a sea serpent and a shipwreck. And they're just going to assume the sea serpent sunk the pirate ship and that's all there is. There's actually a whole little backstory to it. So I'm excited that I get to tell you about it. And then it's actually our first work day. So maybe we'll get a sneak peek over there. So I have a lot of slides, but they go super fast. You get to see the origin of our little story here. I'm going to start sharing my screen. All right. Thanks for being here, everybody. Far off at sea, a ship makes its way to an unknown destination. Its captain is holed up in her quarters, likely writing in one of her journals of some marine oddity she saw today, or a botanical or archaeological discovery at her last port of call. She travels the world in search of oddities, treasures, and knowledge. And she always keeps an eye out for a sea serpent she's heard about from other sailors. But the captain herself isn't even aware of all the secrets of the artifacts she's carrying on her ship. Little does she know that a sea serpent is following her day and night, sworn to protect that same treasure she carries in her holds. We may never know exactly what happened right before we come across the scene. An accident of some kind has occurred. A shipwreck. Cargo is spilling into the ocean. The sea serpent looms above, watching intently. Has the serpent sunk the ship or come to help? What do we know of the enigmatic captain from her quarters? And what stories will we discover in the treasure chests floating into the waves? This is our 2024 Burning Man project and beyond. We are hoping to build this to a level that will have a really long life.
DJ.
People ask what the origin of this project is, and the origin is my favorite childhood book, Cyrus the Unsinkable Sea Serpent.
DJ.
In the book, what's that?
The resolution is not super great for me. I don't know how it is for other people.
Yeah, I'm seeing like half of your screen.
I don't know what to do about that. I tested all this out. Is anything changing?
Yes.
Yes, now we see it.
Here. So,
That's perfect.
okay. What do you see now?
Now I see your whole window. Like,
That is so strange. I tested this out too. Tested this out with the presenter view. All right, well, here we go. So Cyrus is a big loser. He floats around the ocean all day eating sardines, and he doesn't know what to do with his life. Till one day, he's challenged by a shark to sink his ship. So he goes to the pier and waits for the next ship to sink. And as it's leaving, an old man says, "You'll never make it." And Cyrus thinks, wow, what a terrible thing to say. I better follow them and make sure they're okay. He immediately forgets he's supposed to sink the ship. So he follows them, and sure enough, they hit trouble. They hit the doldrums. And so in the middle of the night, he blows on their sails and gets them out of the doldrums. And then they hit a storm, and he wraps his body around the ship and becomes unsinkable and gets them through the storm. Then they get attacked by pirates. So he sinks the pirate ship. And now they're really in trouble. Their mast is broken, but now he reveals himself and he starts pulling on the anchor chain. And they say, "Oh no, surely this monster will take us back to his lair and eat us." And then after a while, they realize that he's there to help. So he pulls them day and night and gets them safely to shore and becomes a hero. And then he goes to an island and sleeps for a whole month, just like us after Burning Man. So I love this goofy little story, Cyrus's goofy little face. And this is absolutely the heart of the project for me, but certainly not the aesthetic that I'm going for. So I started looking for more adult sea serpent myths, and I looked all throughout the West. What could have this same heart? I found nothing. Everything was a monster. There's Jormungandr, Tiamat, Scylla from Scylla and Charybdis. Everything I found was just a mindless monster that wanted to eat people. So I kept looking. I thought, well, gosh, we want to slay dragons here in the West, but in the East, dragons are revered. So there must be something. And that's where I found Nagas. So Nagas are legendary creatures throughout Asia and India, the whole area. They're in Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, folklores. They're kind of everywhere. And they are usually half human, half serpent deities. And sometimes they shapeshift. They're often associated with waterways. And the main thing about Nagas, of which there are thousands, is that they protect treasure or knowledge from people who would misuse them. And they really go wild at their Naga sculptures all throughout Southeast Asia. So anyway, I really loved this. And that, to me, was the more mature version of Cyrus. So instead of this doofus do-gooder, he could be a noble, fearsome, treasure-protecting serpent on a mission. Now, to be clear, I am not making a Naga. I am not making an Eastern deity and appropriating the whole story. I do just want to borrow the name. I think the name really points to a concept we don't have here in the West, that maybe these monstrous things are actually here to help and protect us. So I thought a long time about how to make him look fearsome and noble and scary, but with a code of conduct, something that you could trust would only hurt you if you deserved it. And so after working for quite a while with an amazing illustrator, I came up with my Naga. So this is a galvanized steel frame, painted aluminum scales, and there will be lights from inside. We've got an amazing team of people working on him. So after we went from the drawing, we've gone into digital models, and hope this plays for you. Yeah, we have quite an excellent little beast here that we're excited about. But Naga out there all by himself wasn't too exciting. So I went to my dear friend Steph and Jackie and said, maybe would you make me a little shipwreck? And so enters the captainess. Come on, you can do it. So our captainess is an adventurer, a little bit of a botanist, a little bit of a biologist, a little bit of an archaeologist. She comes from a different time when lady adventurers and sea serpents were a little more common and roamed the ocean. We're looking about in the 1700s. This was a time before photography, before electricity, back when people just had to rely on what they were told of what was out there in the world. And so while she's out there adventuring and exploring different lands and meeting different peoples, she has to pay for her travels. And so she ferries cargo. And of course, she is always in style. Now, we did look at lady pirates. There are some really cool examples out there. Mary Bonney and Anne Reid. There's a woman that got in a bar fight, had her ear bit off, picked it up and wore it in a locket around her neck for the rest of her life. There's one that wouldn't bow to the Queen of England. There's some really cool examples out there. And we had a great time looking at real lady adventurers of the world. But Our Lady is not a pirate. And again, this is such a fun time where people really believed in sea serpents. There were newspaper articles saying sea serpents must be real. So many people have seen them. We know they really do exist. So as our ship travels the seas, keeping an eye out for sea serpents, and it's a ship, by the way, not a boat. The ship is a vessel capable of crossing an ocean. So we looked around for cool vessels. Jackie loved the back of galleons and the fronts of frigates. And so we started piecing together our favorite elements of ships, just like our captainess might have. So in the front, we're going to have our amazing merman figurehead. Going to have detailed wood inlays inside and out. Crow's nest you can climb up to and peer out the spyglass to other pieces of art on playa. Our ship is called the Aldrovanda. That's named after the plant, the Aldrovanda vesiculosa, which is the only carnivorous plant that lives in the ocean. And the last, it will already be sinking when we get to meet our ship. But we will be able to go inside the captain's quarters, peer into her hold, see all of the amazing oddities and treasures that she's collected, look at her library, look at the artifacts of her day and the technologies of her day, which were very advanced, but obviously very different than ours. She'll have a map room and miniature dioramas. So those of you that have seen Paradisium or the inside of the Folly may have seen Jack's amazing dioramas. They'll be returning to make some ocean ones. One of the things I'm most excited about is the treasure. So the ship is breaking, spilling treasure out into the sea, crates of cargo, and it's all made by different artists. So it's not up to us. We're not deciding it. We're pulling in this amazing team. We have about 200 people working on different aspects of things right now. One blacksmith is just making, for example, all the cool pieces you would see on this chest here, deciding what treasure is. And that's a kind of central question to this story. What is treasure? Is it gold and jewels? Is treasure knowledge? Is it artifacts? Is it seeds and dehydrated water? And I can't wait to find out what all of our artists come up with for this. So there'll be all different types of treasure crates, and we're also going to create a real deep playa hangout zone. So we're going to have whiskey casks on fire that will be illuminating the scene. This may be, at this point, no surprise since these images have got out to the public. This is what we're envisioning here. We're hoping we get close enough that people can come see everything and far enough that it's a little bit quieter and we can really work with the suspension of disbelief. So since I guess this is about what people can do to help the art, one thing is like, don't drive art cars right up next to the piece with really loud music. But anyway, we're hoping this is an inviting space where people can explore all these different chests of treasure, and hopefully someone will be inspired to pull up with their ukulele and sing some sheesh chanties. We've got someone who's the curator of spontaneous experiences, who's going to be bringing out props and engaging with people who are waiting in line to get in the captainess's quarters, and hopefully make it just a whole scene. And at night, have those fires lit to invite people to hang out and talk. So that's what we are envisioning at night. There's a lot of lighting we obviously have to do for safety and a lot of fire. Here we've got another little 3D render. Well, we've got a really awesome team here. We're bringing in a lot of our friends who are industry professionals who've been doing this for many years. And we also have a lot of new volunteers who are on their first build. I feel really honored. So many people, including the org, have put their faith in us to pull this together and are giving so much support. It's really exciting to build community this way. Something really special about these projects, I think, is that they bring together people that wouldn't normally meet, people that have really different skill sets and interests. And it takes all of us to make something like this. And we end up forming really amazing friendships by the end. And it feels like I have a real village from having worked on projects like this before. So thank you for following. If you want to follow us on the socials, that always helps. If you just like our posts, just be a subscriber, be a follower, that looks good. And you can find out more about our project, Instagram, Facebook, go to the website 5toncrane.org. Those are our sponsors. If you'd like to support us in other ways, we do, of course, need a bunch of doubloons to pull this off. The org has been quite generous, but we have a super big project, a lot of lighting for safety. It costs about $50 an hour for our propane, for example. So we're going to keep those fires burning. And it's big. Our minimum shipping bill is around 40 grand, you know, and then we've got all this structural steel because we're engineering everything to the highest standards. Because again, we're hoping that it has a nice long life after Burning Man, aside from just being safe out there. We are lucky that 5 Ton Crane are fiscally sponsoring us, so we can give tax write-offs for any monetary or in-kind donations. And you may be familiar with 5 Ton Crane. It's a group that us leads have come out of. They've done some of the larger, more immersive art pieces on Playa you may be familiar with. They're known for doing really detailed, really good quality artworks. They're supporting us in a lot of ways throughout this project, which we're really honored to carry on that tradition. So thanks for letting me share a little bit and coming along on the journey. Now, if you'd like to come take a peek at our first workday here at Seaport Studios, we got the welders getting started. Over here. Say hi, folks. Doing the first welding practice day. Over here, you can see a scale model of Naga. These are the belly scales going around to his back. He's big. So all this will be lit from inside. And then we haven't told the org yet. We might make the neck move. Hey, can you aim this at me?
Can do.
I'm going to show the neck right there. Don't tell anybody at the org. We haven't told them yet. No. Just kidding. We have a
Too late.
we'll work it out. This is our hydraulic tube bender. This is what we're going to be using to bend this massive 2.5-inch tube that we're working with. So I think that's about it for today. Got to get back to work. Thanks so much for having me. And yeah, we'll see you out there.
Thank you, CJ. That was
Thank
awesome.
you.
And it looks like we have exactly 30 seconds left in this breakout session. Oh my God. We're doing it as always with the art department. We're showing off artists and saying that it's our success. So this is totally up to us. And thanks so much for coming. If you have any more questions, feel free to check in with the art department. We're always here to kind of help, and look for the art installation page. That's really the best information to get an idea of all the different art pieces.
Yep.
Anything else?
No, I think we did it. And you know how much I love to end on time. So thank you all for joining us today. I hope it was informative and fun. And we're really looking forward to getting back to Black Rock City with you all.
See you there. Bye, everyone.